Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Autumn Lucas is a keto-adapted certified health coach. She specializes in celiac disease, inflammatory bowel disease, autoimmune disorders, and the carnivore diet for weight loss and healing. After losing over 60 pounds and healing many of her autoimmune ailments, all by following former podcast guests Maria and Craig Emmerich's teachings, she became so inspired by her own transformation that she left her career job in dentistry to work full-time helping others find optimal health and healing with ketogenic and carnivore diets. By the way, be sure to check out episodes we did with Craig and Maria. Craig was hosted on episode 478, and Maria was hosted more recently on episode 572 of Boundless Body Radio, which is actually how Autumn and I got connected. Both of the episodes with the Emmerichs were fantastic and full of great information. Autumn Lucas lives in central Indiana with her husband Nick, who has lost over 150 pounds and counting with her support, and her 4 daughters. You can find her on Instagram, where she features all kinds of inspiring posts and delicious looking food at _authenticallyautumn. Autumn Lucas, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Well, thank you so much, Casey. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad you reached out to me. Thank you so much.
It's such an honor to have you. I do mean the thing about your Instagram. It's full of all kinds of delicious looking food. You make some really, really tasty food.
Thank you. I think, first of all, thank you. I really appreciate that. We can attribute about 99% of that to Maria Emmerich. She's the queen. She taught me everything I know when it comes to cooking in the kitchen and carnivore cooking, especially. So she's the best. But thank you so much. I take a lot of pride in that because we really have turned this into a lifestyle for us. It's not just a diet for us. This is our lives. So we may as well embrace it, make it look beautiful, and make it taste delicious too while we're at it. So.
Absolutely. Oh, I absolutely love that. It's kind of funny today on my Facebook time hop, whatever, it showed like a picture that I posted 10 years ago. So 2014, I'd been a trainer for maybe 7 years. And the whole post was like, make sure you take your Sundays to do your meal preps. And all of my meal preps were covering the counter. Like the entire counter was filled with salads and the yogurts and the measured out almonds and all of these things. And I look back and I'm like, that's cool that I was eating healthy. But not only does that food like not look good to me at all anymore, but like food prep now is like eggs, hard-boiled eggs, or like burger patties, or like it's so much easier now.
Yes, I agree. And I can completely relate. I always joke that I keep Facebook around on purpose for the memories because I crack my former self up. Like looking a decade back, how I managed like meal times with the kids and how I ate. And I was a kind of chronic oversharer on Facebook world for a long time. So reading my posts and just all my ridiculousness, I'm like, but it's okay because it all came together. I figured it out, and here I am today. Yeah, so it's fine.
Fantastic. It's a good reminder for sure. I think back on the
reminder, absolutely.
When I said like you need to take Sunday to do your meal prep, you literally needed all of Sunday. Like it took that long to shop and prep and shop and throw food away, and ridiculous. Podcasting has been awesome for me. I've really, really enjoyed this process. And part of what I really love is getting to talk to some of my heroes, to talk to Maria, to talk to Craig, to say like, I've been following you guys for years. I bought your cookbooks. I love your work. Like that's really amazing. And I really love that part. And the other part about podcasting that I really like is talking to people that maybe I wouldn't have gotten to talk to otherwise. And again, that's kind of how you and I got hooked up. You've been on several podcasts before, but I don't know that I necessarily would have found you besides the fact that you and I were messaging around about Maria's episode. And I kind of started looking at you like, wow, she's got an amazing story too. And so it's been really fun also to find others out there who have found alternate information, have gone through tremendous struggles in their lives. And knowing the little that I know about your story, you have gone through a lot in your life, haven't you?
Absolutely. And I agree with you full circle. The people that I've been able to meet and engage with on the internet since really putting myself out there has been really incredible. Just not only in the carnivore keto space, but just everywhere. There's a wealth of knowledge to be had and inspiration, but also there's this dark side, you got to really know your sources. And that's where the geek part of me really comes into play because I am a very studious person. I like to read. I like to learn. I like to analyze. Craig Emmerich and I really get along in that sense because he's a very, Very smart man. And I really thrive on that too. So yeah, I will, I'm one of those girls, I'll listen to anything you have to say, but I'm gonna go do some research and make sure it makes sense to me before I take off with it.
Just
So
before we get into your study, on that note, like as you've been studying this more and more and more, I kind of like to say that like things that are true become more and more and more true the more you study them. And other things that we think are true that over time kind of become a little bit more convoluted, or we have more doubts about things like, for example, the link between like heart disease, cholesterol, saturated fat. Like we thought that for so long, but now there's like so many holes in that. So being a person who's very studious, how has been your kind of journey through this? And do you feel more confident now that the path that you're on is the correct one?
absolutely, 110%. I always tell the story of where I started this journey, which was on December 31st of 2018, was the day I decided enough was enough. And I didn't decide like in that very moment. It was a very intentional decision for me. And the reason I decided to start my health journey was because I had spent the last year leading up to that kind of quietly reading and studying and following certain keto and carnivore doctors and influencers, because I had tried paleo, I had tried Whole30, I had tried Weight Watchers, I had tried starvation cabbage soup diets. I, did the whole crazy over exercising thing. Like I did everything you can think of to lose weight and get healthy. And I just was, nothing seemed to stick for me. And it's at some point before that day, December 31st, 2018, maybe a year prior, is when I found Maria Emmerich on Facebook. And something about her, whatever post I saw caught my attention. And the first thing I noticed was all of her recipes are gluten free. Oh my gosh, this is great because I have celiac disease. I need to know more. And then I just dove into this rabbit hole. I got her books, I read them, I followed her quietly for probably a year. And then I finally was like, all right, this lady knows what she's talking about. I'm going to give it a try. And that was over 5 years ago. And here I am today.
That's amazing
So.
to take that much time to study. At some point, you must have been like mostly converted. Did it feel like it was like a cognitive dissonance of you like learning and thinking like, I think this might be right, but I'm also maybe not exactly like diving in what I'm actually doing?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Especially when you do jump into something like this that seems so unconventional, right? It's so against everything we were raised to believe about diet and nutrition and what's healthy and what's not. And I had to break through all of those barriers. And because I am, a fact, a very fact and science based driven person, I not only wanted to feel and see the benefits, I wanted to be able to understand the whys. Like, why is this really going to work? And that's why I did so much studying leading up to it. Now, let's be real. I also still was kind of hesitant to give up my beer and my M&Ms. Okay, so I drug my feet a little bit.
Let's be reasonable here. Beer and M&Ms, come on.
Like, let's just be real. I was an absolute sugar and alcohol fiend, and I just that day, something about December 31st, 2018, I was like, I can't start on January 1st because we all know what happens with the New Year's resolutioners, right? So I couldn't do that. So I started on December 31st, and I literally never looked back. I've just evolved further and further since that day.
Savage.
So.
I love it. The very last day of the year. It's so savage. That's awesome. Okay, well, let's talk about your story. Did you grow up in Indiana? Or did you guys just end up there? Like, what was your life like?
So I grew up in the South. So if you can imagine, I grew up on like soul food. I drank Kool-Aid and sweet tea. I don't know if I drank plain water until I was an adult. I ate a very typical Southern like comfort food type diet. I originally moved to Indiana when I was about 8 years old, and then spent the rest of my childhood and young adult years kind of moving back and forth between Georgia and Indiana with family members. But I've been here in Indiana now permanently we're going on 17 or 18 years now that I've been here. And this will be my home until my kids grow up. My youngest is 10 right now, so we've got 8 more years. I'm counting down the days, and then we're going to move. I don't know where. My husband wants mountains. I want ocean. So
there you go.
We're going to have to
yes, you will. Wow. Okay. So when, eating that way, I can imagine what your childhood would have been like. Did you feel like you had a tough time concentrating in school? Were you overweight? Like what things were you kind of dealing with as you were growing up?
So my story is a little interesting because I have a few different factors that come into play. The first one is I firmly believe that I had celiac disease active at birth or very soon after. The reason I say that is because even as an infant, I suffered failure to thrive. I was very small. I was extremely colicky. My parents always tell the story about how I was the kid out of 5 kids that just screamed all the time and could not be consoled. And at one point, my mom said when I was a toddler, they actually accused her of malnourishing me because I was so skinny. And she took me to the doctor and I had like a belly full of, I don't know, ravioli or whatever it was. And they were like, you're not feeding this kid. No, they were feeding me, but they were feeding me a standard American diet. And at the time, I mean, I didn't know what normal was. I've been sick my whole life, right? So to me, I thought you eat and your tummy bloats a little bit and you don't feel good. I didn't even think anything of it until probably sophomore or junior year in high school is when my really severe symptoms started to pop up. And that's kind of where I feel like my story should start. But anyway, so I think I've had celiac disease forever. And then didn't really do anything about it because I wasn't educated. I didn't know. I just thought I had a stomach ache all the time. And I was always really anxious. That's another thing. Just really struggled with a lot of anxiety growing up. But my sophomore or junior year, I'll never forget the day. I had gone through a traumatic event. So kind of makes sense now looking back, but major trauma in high school happened, and my lymphocytic colitis symptoms turned on like a light switch. I was 16, I think, at the time when that happened, and it just never went away. It just one day popped up out of nowhere, started having very, very frequent, extreme bowel problems, and that's kind of where it all started for me.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay, I was curious about that. I'm sure all of the listeners are way smarter than I am, and they know what lymphocytic colitis is. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. So that's where I am. So if you don't mind, explain what it is.
Yeah, so lymphocytic colitis is an autoimmune disease of the large bowel. It can be caused by autoimmune triggers. There are some cases that can actually be caused by overuse of NSAID pain relievers as well. And in those cases, that can be reversed, but mine is actually autoimmune. So over the years, first of all, it took me years to get diagnosed even with that because I was a high school kid and embarrassed about having diarrhea and didn't want to say anything. So I just kind of dealt with it until after I had my twin daughters. And that's when I finally brought it up to my doctor. So I didn't get diagnosed until I was 20 or 21, but I've had it for that long. But it just causes chronic, extreme, frequent diarrhea in most people. Just the large colon just doesn't work or function as it should. So if you can imagine for someone at that age, 17, 18 years old, following the food guide pyramid because I'm a rule follower and that's what I do. I was trying to slam 7 to 10, servings of grains a day. I was eating tons of fruits and vegetables because I thought I needed the fiber and that's good for you. It absolutely wrecked my gut. I was so sick. It was unbelievable. So, of course, naturally over the years with education and, process of elimination, and eventually I see your carnivore cookbook back there. That's the book right there that probably changed my life the most.
Really?
I ended up doing a full-on carnivore autoimmune protocol 2.5 years into my keto journey just to get all the plant foods out of my diet. And that is what has helped my lymphocytic colitis the most.
Yeah. Wow. You mentioned being a rule follower, but also following like standard American. Would you say that like your diet leaned more towards like a quote unquote healthy version of the standard American diet? Like literally there were fruits, there were vegetables. It wasn't just like Fruit Loops and Skittles.
Yes, so I definitely leaned more towards the I'm going to eat healthy camp. But my idea of healthy was very based on what, society and advertisements told us was healthy, right? So, I mean, I can remember sitting at the lunch table in high school and people always complimenting me because I always packed my lunch because I hated school lunch. But they're like, oh, your lunch is so healthy, Autumn, because I would use whole wheat bread and eat carrot sticks and eat this crappy Yoplait yogurt. And I just thought I was balling. I thought I was doing great. But, you only know what you know, right? So
yeah, well, it was fruits and vegetables. I didn't need to ask you about the Skittles and Fruit Loops. Now I just lost them as show sponsors. So that's kind of a bummer. I used to love Skittles, by the way. So that sounds miserable. Digestive issues, the way people describe them, I'm so fortunate I never had them. They sound absolutely awful. I mean, is it to the level where I've heard like other guests where they're like literally traveling with like toilet paper rolls and like when you have to go, like you have to socially, I guess, was it just like super uncomfortable besides the physical pain?
Very, very much so. That probably negatively affected so many aspects of my life, from self confidence to relationships to even, I almost lost my job in dentistry over it when my symptoms got super duper extreme. It's completely life altering. And that's really, I think that's what sets me apart from some other people that have dove into the keto and carnivore journey, especially for weight loss. Because yes, I obviously was very inflamed and a little overweight, and I had some work to do there. But the reason it's stuck for me is because it helped heal me from those horrible symptoms. I mean, I was 35 years old and sleeping on a puppy pad because I would have accidents in my sleep. I would have to wear a diaper if I was traveling long distances. Or another thing I would do is I would just honestly just starve myself for like 2 days before I knew I was going on a long trip, because we couldn't just pull the car over every 30 minutes for me to go to the bathroom. And that's how extreme it was. So, really, up until a couple of years ago when I started, especially carnivore is what really did it, I didn't travel much. And just in the last year, since I turned 39 and 40, so in the last year, I have just been going all over the world, man.
Good.
And it's because I don't have that problem anymore. It's just so much better. I'm so much happier. Relationship's great. Everything's good.
That sounds
So,
insanely traumatic. I'm so glad you're able to like go out and experience the world and travel now after that. That sounds terrible. Um,
yeah.
Before we get to the good part of the story, what other like physical ailments? We mentioned the weight loss, 60 pounds. What other things were you kind of dealing with?
You name it, I was dealing with it. Chronic depression and anxiety, joint pain was insane, off the charts, really bad. I can remember telling my gastroenterologist several years ago, I said, Dr. T, my hands feel like I'm an 80-year-old woman and I'm 30 and I'm in dentistry. Like, I need my hands and it hurts. And he was just, of course, now this is where I get a little frustrated, and I know a lot of people watching this will be able to empathize with me. Even my gastroenterologist never talked to me about my diet.
It's
I'm
insane.
like,
It's insane.
why? It took them. I didn't even get diagnosed with celiac disease until I think I was 36, and that was after 16 years of being diagnosed with lymphocytic colitis and not responding to treatment. Anyway, just it was crazy. So yeah, this is something that I've literally had to figure out on my own, because I'm sitting there. I'm 30, mid 30s. I've got 4 kids, a full time job, a house full of rescue animals, a husband, and I did nothing but go to work, do what I needed to do to get through the day, go home, and then I would just curl up on the sofa and be miserable. And because of that, that of course made me more depressed. So I just laid around and ate, junk food and drank alcohol because that numbed my anxiety and depression. It was terrible. So yeah, that moment, again, December 31st, 2018, I was like, if I don't do something, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Like this isn't okay. I'm going to die. So I knew for me, this journey was about saving my life and giving my children the mother that they deserve, giving my spouse the wife that he deserved, and just living instead of existing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So before this interview, you sent me some before and after pictures of yourself. Yours were crazy. The difference is insane. It's like two different people. Your husband, 150 pounds down, we mentioned in the introduction. How about him? If you don't mind me asking, like what were some of the things that he was dealing with by the time that we got to that date, December 31st?
Yeah, so my husband's journey has not been as long lasting as mine. So I started my lifestyle change about over 5 years ago. My husband took a lot longer, and he and I have a backstory that we could spend a whole episode talking about. That I won't bore you guys with the whole story, but he and I were married once before. We got divorced about 8 years ago, and since have reconnected and remarried very, very happily. We are so blessed that we were able to make it work. But I would say about 2 years ago is when obviously I knew he was very overweight, and we co-parent. So I saw him regularly, and it worried me sick. But I just didn't feel like it was my place to say anything. So I really did just wait for him to come to me. And he eventually did. And what got him wasn't that he was massively overweight, it was his pain. He started having the same stomach problems that he knew I had been having for decades. And he didn't know who else to reach out to because he wasn't getting any answers from his
Wow.
doctors. So he reached out to me and I started working with him, more so just to kind of eliminate the crap from his diet so that he could feel better. Of course, in the back of my mind, I knew he's going to lose weight. But we didn't count macros. We didn't make it about weight loss at all. It was like, Nick, what can we do to get you feeling better? And that's what started his weight loss journey. I'm not sure how much he's lost at this point. Our at home scale, when he started, maxed out at 400 pounds, and he was over that 400-pound limit. It erred on him. But assuming he started at 400 pounds, which I know it was actually higher, he's lost over 150 pounds already. And he's working on the last 20 or 30 pounds and looking at possibly doing some skin removal surgery. I'm very, very proud of him. He's doing great.
He
And he
looks
feels
great.
better.
He does feel better.
So,
Oh, good.
yeah.
Wow. Good for him. Like that. Yeah. The before and after picture for him is absolutely staggering. So good. Yeah. Good for him. So let's go to that date, December 31st, 2018. What practically, how did you get ready? What did you do?
So I basically just dove all into Maria Emmerich's clean keto is where I started. It just all made sense to me. And I got the whole family involved. At that point, the whole family was eating gluten-free because of my celiac disease. And I just am not willing to allow gluten to enter my home. So they were already used to gluten-free. So that was good. So then we just had to transition to like a very healthy, protein prioritized whole food diet, right? So I cut out all the starches and the fruits and the junk, got rid of most, if not all, of processed foods in general. And I just got in that kitchen and I started cooking. And I was cooking recipes from Maria Emmerich's books or, meat and low carb vegetable. And that's just what we did. And the improvements that I experienced were literally almost immediate. And again, I knew I needed to lose weight, but even for myself and my journey, I never really counted macros. I just changed the way I ate. And I know with some of my clients, really all of my clients, I'm like, let's at least know your macros so we kind of have something to go on here. I need something to quantify, right? Since so many of us have a background of chronic overeating, like you got to figure that out. But I just started cooking real food and we went from there. Did great. I lost 30 pounds in probably 3 months, which is huge weight loss for someone my size. I'm 5'3". My starting weight was somewhere between 168 and 178 pounds. I say that because I didn't weigh myself until a week into starting because I was so ashamed of my weight. You do that. So, but yeah. Anyway, lost like 30 pounds and I was like, holy crap, this is crazy. Of course, it makes sense because I was so inflamed, right? So a lot of that was inflammation because I had just been eating sugar and drinking alcohol and fast food and all the things. And then I went to a whole food, non-processed, low carb diet. And that worked really well. I was happy with my 30-pound weight loss. I felt great at the time at 130 pounds. My depression and anxiety decreased quite a bit. My stomach problems got a little better. I'll say that. Not great. I was still struggling. And if you search far enough back, some of my interviews I did 2 or 3 years ago, I'll talk about how, well, I'm not great, but it's better.
Oh, funny.
So anyway, about 2.5 years into that process of eating clean keto, something just triggered me to just reach out to Maria Emmerich personally. I was like, something's not right here. My stomach's still bloated. I'm still going to the bathroom too much. Joints are still aching. I gotta talk to this lady. So I did a personal health assessment with her, which is kind of like a one-on-one health consult where she talks to you about, different ailments, supplements, things like that. And in that consult, she said, Autumn, have you ever done the Carnivore Autoimmune Elimination Protocol? I already owned the book, Carnivore. And I was like, I knew you were going to say that. No, ma'am, I haven't. And again, like I said, I'm a rule follower and I will do what's told of me. And when the queen of keto tells you to do something, you do it. And she said, Autumn, you need to do the autoimmune elimination protocol. Can you eat beef, salt, and water for 30 days and go from there? And I said, yes, ma'am, I can. And that's what I did. It literally changed my life within a month. I think my starting weight when I started eating strict carnivore was around 126 pounds, I think, which is good. You know, 5'3". Wasn't terrible. I lost 12 pounds in a month.
Wow.
No counting macros, nothing like that, just eating beef, salt, and water. So, again, how much of that was inflammation because of the plant foods that I was consuming on the keto diet? A lot. A lot. So it just kind of started from there. Started with beef, salt, and water only for 30 days. I was extremely happy to add a new protein on day 31, and I did. And then I progressed through the levels of an autoimmune elimination protocol. And for people that don't know what that is, it is for people that are eating very strict carnivore for health reasons. You can eat carnivore and not lose weight at all. I mean, that all boils down to prioritizing your fats and your proteins in a certain way. For me, it was all about figuring out what foods work for me and what doesn't, because clearly I had some ongoing issues that just keto alone wasn't taking care of. So I progressed through the levels. I finally settled very firmly on where I'm at right now. I eat level 3 egg-free carnivore, which means I eat all meat, all seafood, fish. I will eat some dairy as tolerated. I cannot eat eggs. It's such a bummer because I love eggs.
Oh,
Every time
no.
I try to reintroduce the eggs, it is not good. So I had to give up eggs, but it's okay because, you know, I feel great. I look amazing. I look and feel better today at 40 years old than I feel like I did in high school. And I'm proud of that. And for me, what keeps me going every day is how I feel.
Yeah,
So I feel great. I'll just keep doing this because it works.
that's
My
amazing.
husband's similar. Yeah, he eats pretty much strict carnivore as well. That just works best for him. It's yielded a lot of weight loss and a lot of healing for him as well.
That's
So
amazing. Well, that's great news for me. There's more eggs out in the market for me. So thank you very
that's
much.
right.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
you're welcome.
I,
Anytime. Glad I
I
could help.
appreciate it. Can you explain to somebody who's listening to this and maybe, they've heard of carnivore, low carbohydrate, and you're talking about this level of carnivore that's like beef, salt, and what? Like that's it? Like you can't just live on that. Can you explain why there's different levels and why not everybody needs to be at the highest level of strictness forever for the rest of their lives?
Absolutely. So first of all, when people reach out to me, like people are interested in me coaching them, 9.9 times out of 10, it's because they see one of my bikini pictures on Instagram and they want to look like me. So I immediately have to identify what's your why, because if it's just strictly weight loss, this may not be a protocol for you. And that's because so many people perceive carnivore, or maybe they honestly feel this way, as very restrictive, right? And I understand that. Carnivore seems very restrictive to a lot of people when you're going from a standard American diet to beef, salt, and water. Like, how does anyone survive, right? So it is an extreme elimination protocol, but it is so worth it to figure out what works for your body and what doesn't. So I encourage anyone that has ailments, especially joint pain, leaky gut, autoimmune issues, Lyme disease, those types of conditions that are chronic and inflammatory in nature. This is the best way for you to figure out what works for you, because the least inflammatory food for human beings and the most nutrient dense on this planet is beef. It comes from cows, friends. It just does. And I feel like the Emmerichs did a good job of laying that out in the Carnivore Cookbook, because they have literal charts comparing kale, blueberries, beef liver. Like, it's just all there. So anyone can thrive on all beef, salt, and water. You're not going to be missing out on critical nutrients if you eat that way. In fact, I dare to say you're going to thrive and feel your absolute very best eating that way. However, it can feel restrictive to some people, and variety is the spice of life, right? So that's when you start progressing up the levels of carnivore. So once you've done your 30 days of beef, salt, and water, that's kind of your reset if you're trying to figure out, different triggers in your diet. Then you progress to level 2, which introduces other ruminants, your lamb, your pork, things like that. So just slowly reintroducing all those foods. If you react, you remove that food from your diet and you keep on going. Level 3, you're going to add all meat, seafood, fish, eggs, and then dairy if able. I will say I'm a little contradictory here, because for most people with autoimmune diseases, and even my own clients, I tell them you should not be having dairy. I know that I probably would feel a little better if I didn't eat dairy, but listen, I'm deep in maintenance here and I'm trying to keep my weight where it is. So I like to add the dairy because it just gives me that extra boost in fat and calories. So, yeah, it just works for me. And then anywho, level 3, that's that. And then level 4 is when you start playing with spices if you want to. Okay, so level 4 carnivore is what I would kind of refer to as dirty carnivore. So that's when you're eating all animal products, but adding, plant-based spices. Some carnivores will consider like erythritol or allulose okay because they're zero glycemic, whatever. So that's all that means. And then from there, if you've achieved your healing and you feel like, you know what, I'm going to start adding some plant foods in, I just recommend you starting with low oxalate things and going from there and just see how you react. With me, I've just settled very comfortably with eating meat, seafood, and some dairy, and I'm happy with that. And I feel really good. So that's that.
That's amazing. Thank you for that explanation. When you're talking about that level 1, the strictest version of carnivore, again, it's going to feel really difficult, but I'm with you. Like, I really encourage people to give it a good try for 30 days because that reset will then allow you to do exactly what you explained. Let's now open some things up and see how you feel. I would assume after a reset that most people would do much better with eggs than they would dairy. That's not the case for you, and you would not have known that had you not taken that time to be very strict in that period of time. And of course, after 30 days of just that, you're going to want other things. You were excited on day 31 to mix more things in, which is great. But without doing that reset, I wonder if somebody will ever really truly know how much better they can feel,
They won't. And that's what it kind of breaks my heart and it really frustrates me in my own. I mean, had I known this great news a decade before I discovered it, who knows? Maybe it would have cut off, a decade worth of suffering in my book. But yeah, so a lot of times clients will come to me and, they'll be like, I want to lose weight. Oh, and I did this allergy test and I have food sensitivities to da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, listen, first of all, food sensitivity tests, in my opinion, are mainly garbage. Okay. The only way you're really going to know how your body reacts to a specific food is to do an autoimmune elimination protocol. That's how I found out about eggs. Otherwise, I never would have known because eggs are in everything and they're healthy and they're carnivores. So like had I not taken that out of my diet, I wouldn't have known. And here's another thing, because of course I have celiac disease and I do have a bunch of food allergies as well. I've had all those allergy tests a million times. And guess what's never popped up? Not once. Eggs. Never. They're like, oh yeah, you're good. You can eat eggs. I'm like, no, I can't. Let me tell you what happens when I eat them. It's bad. But yeah, it's very, very enlightening and eye-opening when you learn what foods affect your body in what way, right? It just, to me, it's the ultimate experiment and ultimate act of self-care. Like you want to feel good, right? So there's really no magic pill. Whenever that, becomes a thing, I guess, then great. But until that day comes, I just did not get a lot of good feedback from doctors or specialists. They never really offered me anything that helped. They just wanted to give me a prescription and send me on my merry way. And I was like, nope, I got to figure this out on my own. So that's kind of where it started for me.
Okay,
So.
perfect. I want to stay here for a second. I love this hot take about the food allergy, food sensitivity test. When I was working for the corporate gym, it was one of the products that we would sell. We'd sell tons of supplements and we'd sell tons of tests. And they hit it was the food sensitivity testing, I want to say. And it hit, a product what we could sell. We sold it and everybody loved it. And it was crazy because, people wanted it and they would learn their class 3, class 2, class 1, or like different colors of things they could. But I always had questions about it. None of it ever made sense. And some people would say like, you eat eggs, therefore you're more sensitive to eggs. And other people say, no, well, you wouldn't be sensitive if you eat them all the time. It's these other foods that you never eat. And the list of foods that would come back, I believe it was like 96 different foods. And it would be down to like white versus black pepper. I don't know who out there is studying this sensitivity to white versus black pepper. You know what I mean? It was very strange. So yeah, tell us again what you would recommend rather than doing some of these tests and rather than what I would say is like wasting a bunch of money.
Exactly. So all I'm going to say about that, my friends, is an autoimmune elimination protocol is the cheapest self-diagnosing tool on the planet. You go down to beef, salt, and water and progress from there, and your body is going to tell you what you react to and what treat your body kindly very, very quickly. And to me, that is the most important tool. Now, obviously, if we have severe food allergies, that's a different story. Please do not try to reintroduce nuts if you have a nut allergy. No, no, no. That's not what I'm saying here. But for food sensitivities, especially, your body is going to give you the answers it needs. You don't need to go spend thousands of dollars on these skin prick tests and these at home, blood blot things or whatever, because historically they're completely inaccurate. They're actually going to give you the markers for the foods that you eat the most frequently. That's what shows up on these things. So, my mom did one. My poor mom. I love her to death, but this is like what I do for a living is just not her thing. And I'm like, that's fine, whatever, mom. It's okay. So I don't ever really say anything to her, but she did this food sensitivity test and she's like, Autumn, it said I'm sensitive to eggs. I was like, do you eat eggs every single day? Yes. I'm like, well, you're probably just fine, just eliminate them for a little while and then reintroduce and see. Sure enough, she's fine. Like, she's not sensitive to eggs. I'm like, come on now, let's get real here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, basically for me, after almost 4 decades of being brushed off, kind of just not being taken seriously by multiple doctors over the decades, I just was like, I'm gonna take this into my own hands, and have experienced by far the most improvement in my diet, or in my lifestyle, I should say, and in my quality of life, just by paying attention to what I eat and how it responds, or how my body responds to it.
Such a good point. And I think most people could be very intuitive with that and pay attention to what their bodies are saying. But for somebody who's not, like, could you maybe say some like really common, I guess, signs and symptoms that a food isn't all that great for you? Like, is it bloating, sweating, or trouble sleeping? Like, what are some common things you see?
I've seen it all. Oh my gosh, anything. I would say the vast majority of Americans are sick and suffering, and they just think that's how it's supposed to be. And that was me 5 years ago. I mean, I was an extreme case, but I went 35 years with just living an extremely poor quality of life. But because the doctors didn't really have any good answers for me, they just wrote me prescriptions and they certainly never talked to me about my diet. I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to get old and be sore and miserable forever. I don't know. So, yeah, if you are having trouble sleeping, if you're anxious all the time, if your skin isn't vibrant and glowing, if your hair's falling out, if you're overweight, if you've got pain, gut issues, if you're having trouble going to the bathroom, if you're going to the bathroom too much, these are all signs that something about your diet specifically and or environment is not working for you. And I do want to, before we wrap up today, dive into environment a little bit, because I have some interesting information that I think could help people out with that as well. But really starting with that diet, I mean, I, obviously work on the internet for a living. So I do a lot of scrolling on Instagram. And these reels that people will put out of like, watch me make breakfast for my 1-year-old. And it's like tater tots and powdered donuts and a processed plastic baggie of like applesauce and a just like juice pouch thing. I'm just like, and I'm not judging. I mean, I'm not mad at that person. They just don't know.
Yeah.
Like, they don't know any better. But I'm like, how do any of us stand a chance?
I don't know how anybody stands a chance. Did you see the one circulating around in the last 2 days, which is like, make a healthy meal for your family? And it was like McDonald's. It was like like this casserole. It was disgusting.
I still can't tell if that video is parody or not. I've watched it like 4 times. I'm like, is she serious? I really am not sure.
Oh, it's disgusting. Yeah, I tried it, and like I don't think I got the fry to cheese recipe or ratio right. And I'm just kidding. It looks disgusting, and you're right. Like that's what people are up against, and I'm like. It's this weird place where we are with low carbohydrate because the science just more and more and more. We just interviewed Mariella Glant. She just published this study of all these people in her clinic, like 90% of them reversing type 2 diabetes. We've got Dr. Nick Norwitz, all this amazing work on statins, the statin versus Oreo thing and LDL cholesterol and the type 1 stuff. Like all of this stuff is coming out and it's so wonderful and powerful, but the powers that fight against it are so strong, and they just double down and double down and double down. And there's new Netflix documentaries about the stupid twin study, and all these processed food companies are in bed with the American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association. It's so, on the one hand, it's so cool, and on the other hand, it's so like it's such a bummer.
It is such a bummer. And I completely 100% am in line with you there. Full stop. I will often get questioned. This one drives me nuts too. People are like, well, you're not a doctor, Autumn. I'm like, well, no.
Thank God.
Maybe I should go to medical school. I don't know. Maybe I should infiltrate the system. But I'm like, it, seriously, people, come on. To me, they're trying to put 6-year-olds on Ozempic. Like, really?
It's crazy.
Come on, like something's not working here. And a new drug to me, 9 times out of 10 is not the answer. I mean, I've read the science, I see the studies, I see the trends, I see what Americans looked like in the 60s and what we look like today. And it's sad and it's heartbreaking because, again, I'm not judging anybody. This is a product of our society and our environment.
Yep.
And like, unless you really dig in and you do your own research and start studying and experimenting what works for you and your body, and you have the results, long lasting results, that's important too. It's an uphill battle.
It is.
It's difficult. It's a hard industry to be in. It's a heartbreaking industry in some ways. I get very, very fulfilled when I help somebody improve their quality of life. And that's why I do what I do.
Yep.
For me, it's all about, I want you to feel better.
Yep.
I want you to feel better. And I want you to be happy. Like if I achieve that, then I'm a happy girl. But you've got this society where they're like, oh, well, you're supposed to be skinny, but also you can eat all this crap. And here's a shot that you can take to counteract that. And I'm just like,
yeah, I know.
Yep.
I know. Just a recent flight recently. There's like, I don't know. She's like 2. She's sitting in the chair. It's 6 a.m. on this flight. She's drinking a full Coke, like a liter of Coke, and eating a donut and watching YouTube videos loop around. Like that can't be great. Whatever they can put in there can't be great. And then today I'm listening to a podcast that has nothing to do with health. The host of this podcast is talking about his mom, diagnosed with Alzheimer's, 65 years old, gut-wrenching, tearing the family apart. She doesn't even know, like, she can't play the guitar, so she's trying to play the guitar. It's awful. And the whole thing is about, like, there's no cure. We have no idea what this is. They asked an expert, and they talked about medications and pharmaceuticals, and it's like, I want to, like, email this dude. And, like, man, like there's something, and you kind of can already feel like they're going to look at you like you've got a second head growing out of your shoulders when you tell them you can change your food. You can reverse this. You can put this into remission for sure. I've seen it.
Yep, I have too. And of course, I think the Emmerichs recently just posted a testimony from a dementia patient that, improved her score by, I don't know, dozens of points and was able to get out of the dementia rehab center. And she's sufficient again. Like it saved her freaking life, people. So I don't know, when people, I don't get a lot of response about it anymore, but especially when I first started eating carnivore, I would get a lot of negative feedback or reaction from we'll say ignorant people. It's okay. They just don't know any better, but they're like, oh, well, that can't be healthy. You're going to drop dead of a heart attack, Autumn. I'm like, now, when I was eating Twix and drinking Diet Coke for breakfast, you didn't have anything to say to me then. But now that I'm coming into work with a piece of ham and some eggs, you think I'm going to die? Like, I don't understand. This is how my ancestors ate. Like,
it's bananas.
And they lived good, full lives and probably didn't have dementia and didn't, have cancer like 90% of my biological family has been riddled with. Like, I didn't want that for me. And I do have a very strong family history of cancer, Alzheimer's, mental health issues, and even addictions, all this stuff. And I was like, this is, when I said earlier in our interview, I said, if I don't change something, I'm going to die. I meant it. Like I saw my future playing out in front of me with certain family members. I was like, there's got to be a better answer. The answer is not to wait until I, need extremely expensive therapy and medication. I need to fix this on my own. And I did it. So this is why I love doing these interviews. So thank you again for having me, because I feel like the more we get this word out there and people can see real life, hi, here I am. Like I'm just your average lady living in the Midwest and minding my own business, eating meat and thriving, the better, because this is absolutely possible. And it is not just about weight loss. It is about literally enjoying this very precious time we have here. Like I feel like I've blinked and half my life is over at this point. I'm 40 years old and just now getting into the good stuff, I feel like. So gosh, if I can start spreading the word with young kids even, and they are able to live their lives abundantly and just feel good, gosh, that's powerful.
Amazing.
So I I do that at home with my kids, and they're all doing really great. So I'm proud of them. But yeah, it's shoot.
That's
Oh,
amazing.
it's
I love
going to the
that.
schools.
I just turned 42 a few weeks ago and I love it. Like 40s are awesome so far. I feel great. Way better than my 30s. It's awesome. And
Yeah, absolutely.
the woman you mentioned, Melissa Lujan, one of my favorite interviews of last year was talking to her, Hal Cranmer, who was running the facility that she left, and Eric Collette, who was part of the Mind for All Seasons, which kind of helped rehab her. I'm talking to this woman. She is not demented. And as I'm like talking to her and the other two start to speak to her, they're like, we still to this day can't believe, like when you came to us day one, was not this same human that is talking to us now. She put in a remission. She wants to go volunteer at hospitals and be a health coach. Like,
Incredible. I have
amazing.
really enjoyed engaging with her online, getting to know her in that space. And I'm like, mind blown.
So
It's
cool.
incredible. And it was all done with food.
Yep. Yep.
She did it with food.
Yep. Maria
It's great.
was such a big part of her transition and was so kind and helped her out and sent her some cookbooks. So that was amazing. You mentioned environment. I'm going to bite on this one. I can't wait to hear what you've got about environmental stuff. What do you have?
Yeah, well, we could dive down that rabbit hole as much as you want, but for the sake of time, I won't bore you all too much. However, I mentioned I started clean keto with Maria Emmerich, which is a great protocol, but I have autoimmune problems. So I got 2.5 years into that process and felt like more healing needed to be done. And that's what led me down carnivore. The carnivore diet, and that's where I've existed since. About a year or so ago, was very well in maintenance at that point with my as far as my weight loss journey was concerned, but man, my joints started hurting so bad. It was getting to the point where I would have random swelling in joints. I thought I had like an autoimmune arthritis issue, so I went to a rheumatologist. He blew me off completely, and he was like, I think you have fibromyalgia, you're depressed, you need to go see your general doctor. And I was like, okay. So I knew I wasn't going to get any help from the doctors. So I actually started doing some research on like mold toxicity and SIRS and things like that, because a lot of my symptoms seemed very in line with what I had read and seen in that circle. Long story short, I got on an extremely long wait list with a SIRS doctor because I really thought this is it. I've nailed it. I think I have SIRS, which is chronic inflammatory response syndrome, for those that don't know. And it's when your body is exposed to biotoxins and you are not able to clear those biotoxins like mold and things like that. So, anywho, during that process, while I was waiting for the SIRS doctor to start my shoemaker protocol, which is the typical traditional treatment for that, I started eliminating environmental factors that I thought could possibly be the cause. So, again, keep in mind, I'm eating extremely clean carnivore, level 3, a little bit of dairy, but certainly not enough to cause this kind of issue. I had brain fog. I was declining. I wasn't thriving. And I was like, this makes no sense from a dietary standpoint. Okay. Cause I was doing all the right things. I ripped up all the carpet from our house, got all hardwood floors replaced. I threw away our old sofas. I got rid of my mattress that I had been sleeping on for probably 8 years at that point. Anyway, it was a huge, huge ordeal. It was not cheap, but I'm telling you, within 3 days of the carpets being gone from my house, my joint pain went from about an 80 to a 3
Wow.
in no time. So therein lies environment. Okay. Now I years ago switched to clean beauty products and, very natural. Like I use tallow lotion, tallow soap. I don't do fragrances or anything like that. Very light makeup, and what makeup I use is tested and very safe. Same with my hair. But I just kept ignoring the very obvious environmental exposures in my own home. And I think it's because it's your home and you're comfortable there. So you may not even like see the dirt or smell the smells. And that sounds gross, but it's real. I mean, I know there are tons of people out there that have animals. I'm an animal lover. I have tons of pets. So at any given time, I usually have anywhere between 10 and 13 dogs and cats in my house. Now, I have a big house, so don't judge. we have over 4,000 square feet. So I promise it's not like an animal horde. They're evenly dispersed. However, the dander and the mold and the old urine and everything that collects in the carpet. I mean, I would get my carpets shampooed every year and my sofas as well, but you can't get that clean. You can't. So, yeah, all of that to say, I got all that ripped up, replaced, all hard floors put in. I got a really nice air filter in my workspace, and my joint pain is literally gone.
That's crazy.
Completely gone. I feel completely healed, like a brand new woman. Didn't even have to mess with the shoemaker protocol, which is great. So, what that tells me is I was definitely being highly exposed to ammonia and mold because once I removed it from my house, my symptoms went away. So, I'm lucky that I don't have SIRS. My body was able to get rid of the biotoxins, but I was constantly exposed to them. And that's why I was getting so sick. And no doctor even considered bringing up mold toxicity or environment or anything like that. I had figured that out on my own.
Wow.
So
That's crazy. So obviously you would probably recommend doing the same kind of steps that you did. Change the diet, try to work on, detoxification, try to get oxalates out of the diet, like do those things. And if you still have issues, this is something you need to
yes.
look at regardless of how hard you want to resist it.
Absolutely. And I understand that for a lot of people, it can be a financial barrier. I take no I know I'm privileged. Let's put it that way. I am a very blessed woman. I have a great job, amazing clients, and I could afford to do $50,000 worth of crap to my house. It was not cheap at all, but I did it. And, I kind of sat there and thought, and this is what made me decide to do it, by the way. This is a funny story. Maybe you'll like this. I was sitting there looking at Suburbans because I have a Prius and I have 4 kids and 13 animals. And
It's
like,
tough.
it's tough. Okay. I'm on the struggle bus here. So I was like, I'm just screw it. I'm going to get a Suburban so I can fit everyone in the car and it'll be fine. Well, I saw the price of a new Suburban, on average between $80,000 and $90,000 while I'm chronically ill, waiting for the shoemaker protocol. And I was like, okay, if I can afford $80,000 or $90,000 on a car, I should be putting that money in a more important place. So that is when I decided, nope, I'm going to get rid of these carpets and I'm going to get rid of these old nasty sofas. I'm going to get a new bed and we're going to see how I feel. And that investment probably saved my life
Wow.
because I feel like a brand new person. But if you put it into perspective, obviously that's a big purchase, okay? But even every little tiny decision you make, the amount of excuses I get from clients, well, that I can't afford to eat this way. This is too expensive. I'm like, now can you afford a life of chronic illness? Because that's what you're going to get. Like, do you want to spend $3,000 a month on your prescription medications? Or do you want to maybe invest half of that on a healthy whole food diet? I don't know. I spend less on groceries now than I did on a standard American
Me
diet.
too.
It's way cheaper for me. I just eat meat and I'm happy. Like we hardly ever go out to eat. I don't drink alcohol anymore, so that saves a ton of money. For me, it's about priorities. Did I want to drive that big fancy car? Absolutely. It's still on my list, my friend. But my health is more important and my quality of life is more important than a car or a fancy bag or whatever. So I just feel like priorities, people.
Yeah.
It's about priorities. And what good is that fancy car or that nice designer bag if I feel like crap all the time?
Ask
It's not good at
ask any wealthy person who has lost their health what they would choose, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it's all about. For me, it's just about feeling good. And because I know what it feels like now, that's what really makes me excited every time my inbox pings and somebody's interested in coaching. For me, it has to do with, oh my gosh, I can help this person today. Like it really makes me happy because I've walked the walk, I talk the talk, I've lived through all these things, and I've experienced so many improvements in so many different areas of my life, not only my weight, but my health, and just my quality of life in general. And if I can inspire one person to really dig in and pay attention to what they're putting inside their bodies, gosh, what a difference it makes. That's powerful. To me,
That.
that's way better than a magic pill. I'd rather fix it myself personally. So,
I love it. That's fantastic. This is going to be, just very, very high level. But generally speaking, if somebody truly could not afford it, I think most people probably can, and they just need to reallocate some things. Where, in hindsight, do you think you would have started? Do you think it would have been the mattress? I know it's accumulation of all of it, and the carpets were probably a big thing. Where do you think you would have started?
just anything you can do to improve the air quality or a living situation in your environment. And I understand, like I said, that comes with a lot of privilege. And for me, it was a very, very large undertaking. But even gosh, the amount of people that still smoke or have someone in their family that smokes in the house or even right outside the door, that gets in the air. I don't know, quit that to start. Or, I don't want to tell anyone to get rid of their animals. That wasn't an option for me. I can't. Like, I love my animals and I will always have some little furry critter around the house. But, just considering that as well, just being aware of your environment, and you can kind of pivot if you want to start with products instead of like redoing your whole house, and, get rid of that fragrance crap and
Yep.
start using real tallow to, I don't know. I think my skin looks pretty good. And I use sheep, or not sheep, I'm sorry, either goat or beef tallow. Like that's what I use. And even my husband, he's so sweet. Of course, he's my husband. He has to say this, but he's always like, your skin is just so soft. And I'm like, thanks. And he knows I don't use any weird fancy products. I just bathe with tallow, and that's pretty much it. I only wash my hair like every 4 days. I don't know. It just works for me. So, start small, but make those little changes and pivots, and, see how you feel. Yeah, environment's really important. It really is. Diet is great. Okay. So I feel like diet's kind of the king, right? But if it's not doing it for you and you still have things that are not feeling great, you really need to start looking into that environment.
If it's important to people, they will do that. If it's a priority and they make it a priority, there are steps they can take. So I really appreciate that information. Tell us about your coaching business.
Yeah. So I've been coaching clients one-on-one I'm losing track of time now, but I think it's been about 3 years now. So I love that. I'm certified with Keto Adapted Maria and Craig Emmerich. I went through their certification program, and I did that right around the same time that I decided to go carnivore. That's kind of when I was like, yes, this is awesome. I can do this for a living. So yeah, I was a licensed dental hygienist for 16 years. I went to work, clocked in, cleaned teeth all day, very monotonous, had my small talk with my patients, went home. I never really got into that field for the passion. I did it for money. I was a young mom. I had my twins in college, and I had to pivot. And I was like, well, I got to make a lot of money right out of school. So I went to dentistry, and that's what I did. But it just didn't fulfill me. I didn't feel like I was making enough of a positive impact on other people. To me. Now, I, of course, have had several patients over the years tell me, like, Autumn, you were such an uplifting person. I really loved seeing you. And will you please come back and clean my teeth? And I'm like, well, no, I won't. But yeah, I just got so inspired by this transformation. I was like, I can do more. I can help people. So I went through that process, became a certified health coach, and now I do that full time. I spend all day, every day, 7 days a week. I don't care. It's fun to me. I enjoy it. And, I'm never going to turn down somebody that wants to send me a message and needs some help. So right now I'm focusing on one-on-one. I eventually would love to do group coaching. It takes time. I'll get there. But for now, I love it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've got a couple I just started with a few weeks ago, and they've been listening to the podcast. They've been making changes. They'll probably hear this, and I'm so proud of them. Like, when people start to get it and they start to make progress, it's like my crack cocaine. Be over at their house at 6 a.m. and like work with them. It's like, it's so fun and enjoyable.
Yeah.
If they never pay me, I probably wouldn't care. Like, it's so awesome.
Right.
It's
That's how I feel. It's not even about the money. It just I'm so much more fulfilled today than I was doing a job that I didn't love. And I feel like that's really a great quality for a coach, for anyone looking for a coach. You want to find someone that's really into this. Like, this is what they're doing because they love it. And I feel like that's what attracted me to the Emmerichs, to be completely honest with you. I was like, these people know what they're talking about, and they seem like they're really enjoying this too. So yeah, they're just very real, very, very honest, kind, genuine people, very down to earth. If you've ever met them in person, if not, I highly suggest it because they're awesome. And yeah, I just clicked with that. I was like, yeah, they actually care. And for someone as big as, Maria Emmerich to text me and say, hey, how are you doing, Autumn? Like, why does she care how I'm doing? Right. So that's how I try to treat my clients too. I genuinely care.
Yeah.
And for me, obviously, like I said, 9 out of 10 clients, what do they want? They want weight loss. And I think that's fine. That's totally great. But I'm telling you what, it's those non-scale victories that get me going every morning when they wake up in the morning and they text me and say, Autumn, I got out of bed today and my joints didn't hurt. I'm like, yes, this is amazing. And that's what keeps me going every day.
Let's do this then. Next time we get bummed out that they're trying to sling Ozempic into our kids and the food commercials and all these pharmaceuticals and all this garbage tries to get us down, and it seems like it's taking so long to get this message out. We'll just keep worrying about the one person who's out there who's ready to hear this message and who can transform their life. And your story is absolutely amazing, Autumn. I really have appreciated our time together. Where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Absolutely. So the best place to find me is going to be on Instagram, and it's underscore authentically autumn. The one underscore was taken by somebody else. I don't know. I think it's an active account, but 2 underscores authentically autumn is where you can find me. I'm very active on Instagram. Just hit me up on Instagram.
Okay.
Probably be best.
Awesome. Well, I will do that. I only used 1 underscore in the introduction, so we'll make sure there's 2 there. And I'm going to tag it so people don't need to count any underscores. They can just go right there and go right to your page, which, like I said, the introduction was amazing. Autumn, again, thank you so very much for everything that you've been through and to be able to be so fired up about your progress, not only to help your family, but to change your entire career and to change other people's lives when they're ready. It's so inspiring and awesome. And I've really loved and appreciated your story, and your energy has been very infectious. And just thank you so very much for taking time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Well, right back at you. I really appreciate you. Let's do it again sometime.
Let's do it. Absolutely. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio. Thank you so very much for continuing to listen to Boundless Body Radio. As 2023 has come to a close and we're starting another new year in 2024, I always try to reflect on not only the direction that we want to go in the future, but also how much we have grown in this last year. Our podcast has now generated well over 400,000 downloads from all over the world, and it's all thanks to fantastic listeners like yourself. I hope you are as excited for the new year as we are around here. The lineup of guests that we have coming up is absolutely staggering, and we're always striving to bring you the best content from the most amazing people in health, nutrition, and wellness. Remember that you can always head on over to our website to book a complimentary 30-minute session with us at myboundlessbody.com. On our homepage, there is a Book Now button where you can select a time to speak with us about your health and fitness plan, especially for the new year. We've absolutely loved chatting with so many of you out there to bounce ideas off each other and try to come up with plans to help you achieve specific goals. And seriously, I really do mean this. Even if it's just to say hello and introduce yourself, we absolutely love connecting with our listeners in the community. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well if you want to watch these full interviews and also shorter interviews on more specific topics that are taken from these interviews. We've gotten really great feedback over there, and it's also a really fun way to interact with people who comment. We read and reply to every single YouTube comment we get, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and leave as many comments as you like to keep the conversation going. And of course, if you haven't already, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It really is the best way to make sure that the podcast gets out to more listeners. Your 5-star ratings and reviews are the best way to support us here at Boundless Body, and to support the podcast at Boundless Body Radio really only takes a moment, and it's very meaningful to us. Cheers to 2024, and thank you again for listening to Boundless Body Radio.